I am Courtney Williams. I produce the blog Outlander Behind the Scenes, and I do cast and crew interviews. I write blog posts, and I do this discussion with these lovely ladies.
Okay. My name is Antoinette. I love both the books and the show, and I'm not a purist, and I have lots of opinions.
Yes.
My name is, I'm Outlander Anatomy, and I write the Outlander Anatomy blog. And I've done so since 2014, and I enjoy the books greatly and the show also. And I enjoy the science a lot that occurs in the books and the show. And I write about that.
I'm Catherine. I'm a family physician. And thanks to Carmen, I pay more attention to the medical stuff in the show. And I am a book reader and a show watcher, and I enjoy them equally, especially when the writers get their act together. But anyway, that's another story.
And what is everybody drinking tonight? I'm having ice water.
Tangerine juice.
Oh, I'm having, I guess I'm the only one. I'm having Riesling wine.
Oh, good.
Well,
Nice.
I had a nice wine last night, but I drank the whole lot. So now I'm reduced to ginger ale.
Okay, tonight we are talking about Between Two Fires, episode 502. So let's give our overall impression and just a brief one, and then we'll dive in and discuss. And I'll just go first on that. I was like, wow, while I was watching this episode. I thought it was great. I thought it was great in a different way than 501 was great. I felt like this episode had all the twists and turns. It was what Down the Rabbit Hole was trying to be, but it was actually moving the story forward and relevant. So I thought, I liked 502. I thought they did a great job.
Well, I liked the episode. I thought it was a good episode. I thought it was a good follow-up to 501. I felt we were settling down into the story. That's what 502 came across to me as. Yes, we're settling down after the fireworks of 501. We're digging in now. So I really liked the episode.
I like the episode too. I would give it 4 to 4.5 out of 5 stars. I thought it was interesting. I loved all the medical things and the anatomy that was portrayed. That was a lot of fun. I have some things to say about it.
Me too.
I thought it was great. I felt like it was a good follow-up after 501. And it had the same quality as 501, which is a high quality, and I appreciated that. I really enjoyed it. There's a lot I enjoyed about that episode.
Agreed. Antoinette, what were your favorite scenes from this episode?
My favorite scenes, the first one was Marceline, when she came in and saw, oh my, you all know that how much I love Lauren. And that was one of my favorite scenes. I also liked the scene a lot with Jamie and what's his face, the colonel or whatever is the red coat.
Lieutenant Knox.
Lieutenant Knox. When they were riding out and they were trying to get the measure of each other. You know, it brought me back to almost season 2 with Saint-Germain and all of that thrust and parry kind of thing. So I really like that scene. And well, surprisingly for me, I actually like the scene with Roger and Claire. Horrors. I'm getting soft in my old age.
My favorite scene, I have to agree with Antoinette, was the exchange between Claire and Marceline, and the looks on her face. I was just absolutely astounded. She was all over the place. And you know, maybe my mother was right about you. I just thought it was priceless. And Claire trying to convince her that she needs to become her apprentice. I love that scene very much. And then the other scene that I really liked a lot was actually the scene between Roger and Bree when they were hunting. I thought that was funny and cute. It didn't end up being so funny because I think Roger was deeply wounded. His pride was wounded that he was outshot by his wife. And but I still thought it was well acted, and it was humorous, and it felt very comfortable. To me, they felt comfortable with each other when they were doing the part. So I enjoyed that one too.
So my favorite scene is the one with Marceline and Claire. I think Antoinette, you call her the scene stealer. She just, she's so good. And she just really kept us grounded in the 1700s in that scene. She really reacted, I felt, realistically, the way someone who trusts Claire but is also from that time would not just be like, oh, what do you have here? They'd be like, you know, and just everything everything she went through from the beginning of that scene to the end of it, she's just gold. She really is. And then I went back and forth on what my second favorite scene. And then I settled on Claire and Roger when she was doing the eye exam and they were talking about home being a safer, you know, I thought that was a great exchange between those two.
I think we're equally impressed by Lauren. I love that scene, especially she's so natural. But when she's like, "Don't make me ask it. Don't make me ask it." I was like, "Are you open?" She was like, "Is my mother right about you?" I mean, it was just so. She was just so real. There was no
effort.
It was just seamless. It was perfect. That was just perfectly done. My other my favorite, believe it or not, were when Roger was singing. I liked how they used his singing quite a bit in this episode. I think that Rick has a fantastic voice, and it's not a voice where you're like, okay, he's, you know, classically trained, and so it seems out of place. He's just someone who has like a naturally good voice, and so it fit in both when they did the funeral and when he was singing to his son. And so I like that. I'm usually when they have real use, and he was playing real, and he was actually playing chords. It irks me so much when people pretend to play an instrument on screen. And it was very clear he was playing and he was actually singing, and I loved it.
That was one of my favorite things about our discussion last week that the audio didn't come through for, but Catherine always surprises me with her favorite scene. We were all saying, Jamie doing this, and Catherine's like, I liked the quartet. That was my favorite scene.
And the walls, don't forget the walls.
But the string quartet, I was just like, I love it. She always pulls out something that's like,
by the way,
I don't know what to expect.
Walls are in the house from Marceline and from in the house.
I would not be surprised.
I
bet you John Gary Steele put those in for you.
Well, he should.
I mean, I don't know any other fan who's talked about walls more than you, and
there's nobody that has talked about walls.
There they are in Claire's surgery.
No, there's nobody.
How could you not? Nothing else from season 2. Okay, but think about it. From the very beginning, even when they showed Claire and Frank at Leah, and then they showed them going down the hallway, they showed the stone wall, they showed all of that. And so when she went back, that was the first thing they showed. That was the connection between when she and Frank were there and when she was following Dougal through the walls later in time. They showed that wall. I mean, walls have always been featured.
It's true. It's true.
Wow. It is true.
But I'm not sure anyone appreciates them as much as you do.
Exactly. So that's the point. That's the point I was making.
Yeah, wall porn.
You know what other scene I really liked was the candle making scene. I loved that scene.
Yes.
Because it just painted the picture of I just loved so much about that scene. Oh, the way they showed all the little elements to making the candles, and then just the talk, and it really made you feel like you were in the 18th century.
You know,
Yeah, I
it
was
harkened for
frustrated by
me.
that
It harkened back to the wool walking scene
Yes.
from Rent.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yes.
And why were you frustrated by that scene, Kathy?
Because I was
Are you a candle
empathizing
maker?
with Claire. I was just
Oh
like,
yeah. Oh right.
because I mean, I'm in a place where I practice medicine where people still dispute what I say because of something that their grandmother used to do, and it's dangerous sometimes. And all I could feel was Claire's frustration, going, "Oh my gosh, please stop!" But yeah. So the whole rest of the scene was kind of lost on me.
Well, I mean, I liked that part about it too, segueing into what worked. I really loved the way Claire was presented in this episode, because instead of having the 18th century change for Claire, we actually saw her, like in season 1, being like a fish out of water.
Adaptable.
And it really felt like all the brutality that they showed. I mean, just that start with the tar and feathering, I was like, whoa, but you feel like I am in the 18th century. And those conversations, that candle making scene, and then also when she, was trying to save the guy, then we got to see Claire's intelligence and her ingenuity and her creativity, instead of her bulldozing everyone and then having the 18th century just sort of like get pulled in her wake, which I feel like is what happened in season 4 and the second half of season 3. So I was like, I can like Claire. I mean, this is Claire. This is Claire from the book. That worked so well for me.
Well, what worked for me, one of the creative departures, is I think they might be taking out some characters that we know from the books and putting Marceline in the place of that character. And if that is what is happening, yes, Marceline becoming Claire's apprentice felt good, felt natural, and it exploits the chemistry between Kat and Lauren Lyle, because there is a chemistry there. And so that worked very, very well for me. What also worked for me is the dynamic between the lieutenant and Jamie. And I think that is going to play out interestingly, as the episodes come along. I liked he puts me in mind of, as I said, Saint-Germain in season 2, and that that constant push and pull. So that setting up that relationship really, really worked. And the last thing that really worked for me is the setting up of Claire in her element. I like what you said, Courtney, about liking Claire again. This was not Claire who was insisting that everything go her way and expressing her frustration. Yes, she expressed her frustration, but it didn't make her it didn't make her hard and unwilling to compromise. She took a step back, and when she realized that she couldn't get what she wanted being straightforward, she used subterfuge with the Rawlins thing. So that really worked for me. And I'm really liking Claire so far in season 5.
I have to say that one of the things that I liked about this episode was the number of concurrent stories about the different characters who were caught between two fires. It wasn't just Jamie, it was also now Marceline, Claire, Bree, Roger. It's really an interesting idea, and the theme was carried through. Instead of it just being focused around one particular character for the episode, there were actually several characters that were presented in with being torn between two passions, and I like that very much. I liked the opening credits showing Claire kneading bread. whole wheat bread. It was done properly. And season 1, the bread kneading was not convincing. That it was that the person who was doing it, I can't remember if it was Mrs. Fitz or somebody else, but they didn't know how to knead bread. Claire actually did. I got a kick out of the brief about the bromance that's developing between Jamie and Lieutenant Knox. I'm not sure that Jamie felt the same about him later in the episode as he did at first, but he called him affable, and he said, well, Jamie is, you're a leader and you are industrious. So he complimented him too. And I thought that was unexpected and very interesting. And then the last thing that caught my eye a lot, besides all the medical things, was that the events in Hillsborough that were presented were actually very accurate. Fannin was there. He was drugged down the steps, I think it was of the courthouse, and his house was pulled apart board by board. And people were tarred and feathered, and it was quite a melee. And I thought they did a nice job of presenting that in this episode.
What struck me most when I was watching was the camera angles. In prior episodes, they didn't do a lot of close-ups. There's something about the angles that they're doing now where they're showing people's faces, so they're actually acting through their facial expressions, which we lost for a while there. There was always a lot of scenery, which we don't see much of now. It's all about their faces and their facial expressions, and even in their conversation with two people, they tend to come in close, and I like that quite a bit. The other that I felt worked was the way the story flowed. It wasn't choppy. It didn't jump out of stuff too much. There were a couple times where it's like the scene felt like it ended too soon, but that, it jumped to something else that was equally as interesting, so it didn't matter. But I think that I like Claire. This is probably one of the closest I felt to a kinship to Claire as a physician. She's a surgeon. I'm not, although I've done surgeries, but in the way she handled her situations, in the way her emotions were expressed in this episode, very much were in line with what I could relate to. And I thought that was very, very well done.
Nice. That's a big statement.
Yeah. I think this director, Wolfenden, who did these 2 episodes.
Yes.
Oh my God.
He's good.
They need to keep his ass.
That's exactly on my list of what worked is that director.
Oh my God.
Who I think would dictate the camera angles, right?
Exactly.
What you're talking about. Yeah. He gets it. He gets it.
Gets it.
Yeah.
Very artistic.
Please have him back.
He gets what we want. We want to see our people emote. And we want to let the story be told rather than you telling us the story. Sorry, Courtney.
No, I mean, there's no wasted time. That's what I see. It's like there's no unnecessary segues that's what I love about the last 2 episodes that he directed is just every scene, every sequence is meat. There's no like
fluff.
The other thing that really worked for me was pairing Luke Schellhaus and Tony Graffia. They wrote this episode together.
Yes, they did.
And Luke, come and stay all day if you're going to write with one of the senior writers, because I thought they did a great job. I thought this was really well written. And, haven't been a big Luke fan. So when I saw that in the opening credits, I was like, yes, that's so smart.
It was just well done. It was a masterclass in adaptation. Both the 501 and 502.
Yeah.
I thought the build up to the bonnet reveal was very well done. Like I thought of you, Catherine, when Brianna was sketching, and like stress sketching in the beginning, and you get all that. Like this is very much on her mind. And it's also that circular reference, like last episode, they started with Merton, young Jamie, and they ended with Merton, Jamie. And so it was another circular reference, and then having Roger find the sketchbook, I mean, that's from the books. He finds her dream book, not her sketchbook. But I loved how they worked that in. And then, so effectively Bonnet was very present. He ruined their wedding day and he ruined their child's first steps. I loved how they did that. And then the final reveal, I didn't see it coming. Did you guys realize that scene was going to have him when Bonnet shows up? Were you expecting it? Be
I
honest.
did. As soon as they said, I want you to meet somebody, I knew who it was at that point, but not before.
Yeah. How about you guys?
No.
No.
Yeah.
I was wondering
I
what
really
the hell.
wasn't thinking much about it, to be honest. I just kind of let it go.
And having the women punch each other, that I was like,
I thought it was men in drag. Honestly, I thought it was guys dressed up as women. And I'm saying, what the hell? What is this? That's what I was thinking. I wasn't thinking Bonnet at all.
WWE.
Yes. I just wonder how the hell does this fit in with what has gone before? So it was a big shock.
Yeah. That was a good
well
distraction.
played.
It was a
That
good
was
distraction.
well
Yes.
played.
Yeah.
But I have to say that I liked the fact that he kind of toned down his, Pirates of the Caribbean.
He did. I looked for that.
It was much more toned down.
Yeah.
It was
He was scary.
I respect.
Yeah.
It
was much
his
more
acting
malevolent.
to be in that scene harkened back to his Downton Abbey days. It was just good. It was just well done.
Yeah.
And
Also,
then,
he's extremely agile. I don't know if you guys watched him dance around during that fight scene, but he's really a quick mover. I was impressed.
seeing him in interview has changed my opinion of a little also. It's kind of because he's just very intelligent, very intuitive. So I think that has kind of affected my how
perception.
I see acting also.
Yeah.
But in that scene, but what really got me though was the last line.
Yes.
I mean, that felt like a punch. Even though he said it, he didn't say it with menace. He didn't say it with anything.
But he's
it was
menacing.
Like, I have to was it set an example? I have, I'm a father now. And it was like, oh,
exactly.
Yeah.
I would not have expected that reaction.
Yeah.
Also
you guys
followed
notice
by the look on his face as he was leaving. That look was like, you just wait.
Yeah.
Did you guys notice when he walks outside and he puts his coat on, and that's where I was like, I noticed if there was a swagger or not, and there wasn't. But when he stands up, he puts his coat up, he stands up, he looks a lot like Blackjack Randall for a moment.
Yeah.
Did anybody else see that?
No, I didn't.
See that. I did notice.
I mean, I don't know how he does it, but I was like, wow. Ew.
Yeah.
The sociopaths and psychopaths often have
similar
presentations.
Looks.
Yeah,
it's in the eyes.
Yeah. And
But
the flatness of the affect. Sometimes.
Exactly. And you see the words themselves. What I loved about that last line is that the words themselves are so innocuous. I'm a father now. But because he is so freaking evil, it just felt like a threat.
Yes. Yeah.
The editing in this episode was phenomenal. To end on that line, it's like, whoa. Yeah. Everyone always likes to end on Jamie or end on Claire. It was just, to see him end on that, and then, and it would have been very tempting also to end with Murtaugh going to the dark side.
Right.
But it didn't. That was.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, I thought it was great. Let's just go straight to least favorite scenes, Antoinette. Looks like you're already there.
Listen, I love me some Murtaugh, right? But if they're gonna save Murtaugh, I'm bringing back, for fuck's sake, give him something meaty. If I hear one more line about the freaking taxes, I'm gonna fling something at the TV. It makes his character seem so unworthy. The Murtaugh that we have come to know and to love. and he's tarring and feathering people and participating in riots and talking about vengeance, and all we can hear about is the freaking taxes. It just felt so cheap, I mean, good
So
God.
what would you have done, Antoinette? What would you have done
There
differently?
are so many conversations in Fiery Cross about the reason that the regulators are doing this. There was a particular story about this man, Abel McClellan, I think it was,
Yeah.
whose property was taken because he had gone to sell his crops to pay the taxes, and when he came back, it was too late because they had put out his wife, and his wife went up and sat under a tree and died. I mean, tell a story like that. Do you see what I mean?
Yeah.
And I don't like that. That did not work for me at all.
I
didn't like that.
I wonder though, we bitch about if they spend too much time on that kind of stuff.
But they don't have to spend a lot of time, Courtney. What I'm saying is that there is much more to why these men took the actions that they did.
I see.
A lot of them were coming out of indentured servitude. They had a chance to be really free. These people had never been free. When they were in the Highlands, they were under the thumbs of their lairds and then the British overlords. When they came to America, they were under the thumbs of their indentured masters. This is an opportunity for them to be really and truly free. And instead, what is happening? The overlords are back at it again. So it's not just the freaking taxes. There's much more at stake. And that would explain and help to ground why these decent men are behaving like savages.
I'm getting that the taxes might not have worked for you.
Just a touch.
Was there anything else?
Okay, no. The bonnet reveal, great. The whore fight before, not so much. I was there looking at my screen and saying, what the hell? Are we just throwing stuff in now for the sake of throwing? Are we back to that again?
I think it was a setup. I think that was a setup to show that he still has that brutality, because before they hinted at his brutality, they did show him throw the baby overboard, okay, but that was they still needed to establish his absolute brutality before commenting that he was a father, so that you connected him to.
Yeah,
I can see it now. I can see it now. But when I was watching the show, I just felt, what the? No, I mean, I would have done it differently, but then I'm not.
In those days, they didn't have theater, like go to the theater or their iPads or stuff to play games on. They did a lot of very strange combatant things between animals and people, fighting with each other and so forth, that they would bet on I don't know if they were illegal then, but they used to do that in the cockfights and so forth. So I didn't find it that unbelievable. I actually thought the athleticism of the two women was pretty impressive.
Well, I mean, I've got two men in my house who love to watch mixed martial arts, and they watch these fights like this Tyson Fury and Conor McGregor, and they have these beforehand fights, and it's women often, and I mean that's what they're doing, and they're blood spurting and
they're phenomenal athletes too. So
yeah,
you see, maybe I'm a little bit jaundiced because of previous episodes and lots of fluff and wasting time and padding stuff, and instead of, we only have 12 episodes, for heaven's sake. I don't want to see 5 minutes of a horror fight. I'm sorry, I don't.
Well,
it just felt a little long to me.
Yeah.
But in watching it again and thinking about how it perfectly set up the bonnet reveal.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
And his connection with Forbes.
Yes, that's true too.
Well, and I think it was a technique to like completely get us off thinking about Bree and the bonnet and the Roger, which worked for me. I was like, ooh.
Can I say one other thing that didn't work? No. That
yes.
didn't work for me.
Go right ahead.
Okay. I'm not sure if the writers are really doing Roger a disservice still. And the scene with himself and Bree, talking about the shooting, the shooting and everything, and him being almost offended by the fact that she was a better shot than him. It was like he's in his man pain all the time still, just so out of sorts and just so unwilling to just accept where he is for now and try to make the best of it without the
I think
sense
that's because
of
Jamie casts such a huge shadow.
Yeah, but I'm saying that in writing the character, I want them to give
But I think
him.
that's realistic for where he came from, though.
Yes, and he
it's in
hasn't
the
been a
books.
husband for very
It's in
long.
the book, yeah.
I know
Yeah,
it's in the
he
hello,
came from the
hello,
60s.
hello. I know it is. I know it is in the book, but
No, what I'm saying is he came from the 60s, and women's lib hadn't really caught on at that point. Maybe
Not
Bree
really.
would have caught on to it, but as far as he
But
was
not him.
concerned, he was still in
Yeah.
that phase where I'm the protector.
Yeah.
I just want to like Roger. I really want to start rooting for Roger. I really want to start rooting for Roger. And so I just want them to just write him a little bit more sympathetically and a lot less chauvinistic. That's all I want, because I want to like Roger.
He did take in the
I
laundry
can tell
basket.
you in 2019, I know of situations where women have outshot a guy and they got that same reaction. So in 1960, of course he was going to be, and enough so that Bree even reacted because she felt bad for him. She was like, sorry, not sorry.
But I think it's also, it's not just an isolated thing. She realizes that he's like, well, I can't do this and I can't do that. And she's trying to help him and he still can't do it. I didn't understand why in the book, Claire diagnoses him with like binocular vision or something wrong with
he doesn't have binocular vision. He's not tracking the two eyes appropriately, or there's something wrong with his with his brain. It's one or the other, but he's probably not tracking the eyes to get to create binocular vision.
So why didn't she come to that conclusion in the show? I didn't get that.
I think because it would have been too much explanation.
Too complicated, do you think, Kathy?
Okay.
Too complicated for people to really get it.
Mm-hmm.
You still have to understand that most writing is done to assume that the average is an 8th grade education. I mean, that's basically that's what people are told to write towards, which is probably why they kind of dumb things down a little bit sometimes. But
no.
No, what I'm saying is that would have taken some explanation, though. Even if
the binocular vision thing. No, I get you. And I understand that that's sort of a standard. But by now, these people should know the audience that they're writing to. By now, we're in season freaking 5.
To a degree, but when you start doing technical stuff, when you start even people within medical fields, there are people in medical fields who would have had to look that up. So why put it in there?
But one sentence, his binocular vision isn't working. That means his eyes don't track together like in binoculars. Dun.
Yeah.
Well, sort of.
but
yeah.
Well,
what it would have just given him one. I think he's got enough afflictions. Just leave him.
The other thing that about that I thought was a little bit odd was she said it was in his left eye, but he's actually sighting with his right because he's right-handed. So if you go back and look, he's not looking with his left eye; he's looking with his right, which I think was supposed to be okay.
But when you shoot, you do close.
No, you don't. No, when you're right-handed, you don't close your right eye.
I do. I look out of my left eye when I shoot.
What? No, you can't do that.
Isn't going to work right.
Yeah.
No, because you have to look down the barrel.
You have to. I don't open this. You're supposed to. I know. My husband always tells me because that's.
Wait, so your head's like way over?
If you have a sight on there, of course you have to because it's on that side.
Yeah.
If it's connected, or if you have like the dot to line up, you got to use your right. But if it's not, if it's just straight shooting with no lights and no sight and
Sights.
no line.
Yeah.
I tend to open. I close my
Interesting.
right eye.
Yeah.
Well,
Hmm.
that wouldn't be the way she was teaching him. I did
Yeah.
think that when she put her arms around him, you know, and
Hmm.
kind of snuggled up to him, I thought that was lovely, a lovely
Yeah.
moment between them. And I haven't seen very many that I like a lot, so I like that one.
And it really seemed like Roger was like, ooh,
Yeah,
It seemed like he had hormonal engagement.
Yeah,
In
I
that
think he
scene.
had.
Oh, yeah.
I think his ovaries went into.
I'd probably say that was probably the first time that I actually had a slight hormonal reaction to their interaction.
Yeah.
You know, Roger looks so freaking young. He looks like he's been to the
He looks so
spa and
freaking
back.
good. He
Yeah.
just looks good.
Yeah, he does. He looks good.
He
Yeah.
But he looks young.
Finally.
He's like,
Yeah.
you know, he just
But not
looks
only
young.
that, I mean, the thing is, and I've said this before, I mean, of course, not everybody's seen, yeah, you can go online, watch Rick online.
Yeah. I know.
Go and
I
see
know.
his interviews and watch him, and you'll see that there is like a swagger. There's a sexiness he has. Rod, it's finally coming through the character
I
a
agree.
little
A
bit.
little bit, yeah.
It's
a
just
little bit.
nice to see
Little bit.
because it's like suddenly you're like, okay, I can get it. Why she would want him.
I will say that in his scenes, both with Claire and Bree,
Mm-hmm.
he's the grounding presence for me. He really makes me think, like, know where I am. You know, he when he talks about stuff like Tufty the squirrel and just he doesn't change character. Do you know what I mean? Based on what scene he's in or
It's consistent.
what time he's in, he's the same character, and it feels so good to me. He feels very reliable at this point in season 5, wherever we are.
Good.
I know where I am in season 4. Carmen, what didn't work for you, or least favorite scene / what didn't work?
Well, most of it was medical, so we're saving that, right?
Okay, yeah, we'll
Most
get
of
to
it
that.
lay in the medical or anatomical realm and the autopsy, the mold business. But two things that I'm a little, Merdina was not anything like I had imagined her, who they cast for her, and I thought that was interesting. I'm going to be interested to see if she does, in fact, come into the role in a way that I would like. I think I was expecting maybe somebody who was a little bit more like Mrs. Fitz or something like that. I'm not sure what I was expecting, but certainly not the sort of sophisticated woman that she came, or poised woman that she came across as. And the other one was Herman Husband. He reminded me of the pirate,
Blackbeard.
Blackbeard the pirate.
I couldn't even see him. It's that nighttime scene.
Yeah, it was
Yeah,
dark,
yeah,
but I mean, he the way that he didn't look to me at all like the way that he was described, and you know, they would have had plenty of opportunity, I think, to find somebody who might have fit him a little bit more. I was just surprised by the casting, I guess I would say, of Herman Husband. But I was really, everything else other than the medical, I didn't have a problem with. There were some excellent lines that I hope we'll get to, but that's not what I didn't like. So
Yeah.
I'll stop there.
My only main thing, and well, there was something I noticed, which I'll talk about when we say that, but Fergus got handed the baby, and that was it. And I hope that they're gonna come back around to him and not just be like, everybody loves Marceline. Okay, Marceline's Claire's apprentice, and Fergus is always at home with the kid. I like Cesar, and I want to see more of him.
I like them together.
Yes.
I like Fergus and Marceline together.
Yes.
That's the part that didn't work for me, was
Yeah.
how little they viewed Cesar. But I think that it's almost as if there's something they know that we don't. It's like, come on. Why is he not being used at all? I mean, even his parts from within it's like he's being used as a prop.
Yeah.
That's it.
That's true.
He's a prop.
I don't know. I hope that's going to change.
But he's one of the most interesting characters. He creates one of the most interesting dynamics in the book.
I would like to add something I just thought of, and that is that I was very disappointed to see Murtaugh be the sort of the ringleader of the tar and feathering.
Yeah.
That was not pretty.
That did not work for me at all.
Yeah.
No, I didn't.
I agree.
Like
I
that.
agree with that.
And that was going to be my other thing that I didn't like, that didn't work for me. I think that it was well played by Sam, the way that they had Jamie's character disappointed in the what he thought was just an immoral reaction to the injustice. He was like, you don't fight fire with fire kind of thing.
Not
and even
that
from
way.
a soldier's perspective, and even from from a the perspective of someone who understands tyranny, he still thought that was just inappropriate. We talked a lot about burning crosses in the last season. Tar and feathering was actually probably more widespread than burning crosses.
It was
Burning
very
crosses,
widespread.
no.
That looked
Pardon?
awful. That looked.
Yeah, but
it was very
used
widespread.
A lot. It was used a lot during lynchings. It was
Yes.
there were people were tar and feathered and then lynched. So there was a connection between that terrorization as well.
Yeah.
And so I reacted actually. It always surprises me when I react because I generally you see enough images. I'm in medicine. I've seen so much that I generally don't have a reaction. So when I do react, it always surprises me.
Okay.
And what I reacted to then was just knowing what that pain would have been. Those kind of burns are just terrible.
And you can't get it off. You can't get
it. Well, the thing is, burns, once you get to a certain stage of a burn, it stops hurting because the nerves have been burned as well. So there's not a lot, but as they start to heal, it gets worse. Like tying Murtaugh to that type of...
Exactly.
It was more brutal to me than even just a tar and feathering, because I was thinking of the aftermath of what happened to burns.
Well, the 18th century tar and featherings, at least in the United States, didn't use asphalt tar. It used pine sap or molasses, and it doesn't get that hot to produce third-degree burns, which is what he had. There's no record of anybody dying from tarring and feathering. They may have died from what was done to them later, but there's no record in that century during the Revolutionary times of that happening. And the latest one in the United States I read was 1971 in Michigan, actually, by the KKK. Wow. And it was done to a high school principal. But I don't know what they used there.
But when that happened.
Oh, you were?
Yeah, she's from Michigan.
I'm from Michigan. I was 6 years old. I remember it.
Yeah. That's the one that I read about, and but it wasn't asphalt tar, which gets up close to 300 degrees temperature. That would produce third and fourth, possibly fourth degree burns. I don't know about fourth, but certainly third. And that it doesn't get that hot.
But wouldn't you expect secondary infection though?
Depends on whether or not the skin is broken. It showed that they peeled it off, but from what I've read about it, they didn't always do that. They actually let it, if they were smart, they let it wear off, because the skin, of course, constantly is replacing itself. So eventually the stuff would fall off on its own. But if you peeled it off, then I expect it made blisters, don't you think, Kathy? Even at 140 degrees or so, you'd get blisters from that. But I don't think that you would get third degree burns from it. And that's what was depicted. And the other thing that I really thought was unrealistic about it was that man would not be sitting up in a chair like that if his whole chest was covered with third degree burns. I don't think he could tolerate it. The pain would just be unbearable or barely bearable. So I thought those were, I understand for theatrical reasons why it was done and so forth, but it's not very true to what tarring and feathering was in those days, in my opinion. It looked to me like it was meant to be asphalt tar, and it wouldn't have been.
What would have made that something that dark, like a peat?
Where would they find
it could have been an
peat
oil.
Carolinas?
It wouldn't have been an oil-based something.
Well, they may have used a petroleum product, you know, for all I know. I don't really know what they use. It might have been molasses or treacle, you know, or something like that, that looks very dark and thick, that they used.
What I thought was odd
really
was
know.
them using a brush-like thing.
No, they did that a lot because they didn't want to
Really, I
touch
thought
it.
they just kind of poured it. Huh?
Well, they actually daubed it more frequently because they you know, they didn't want to get splattered with it. So throwing it on somebody, you could actually get splattered, but they often dipped either a mop or a rag like they did and swathed the person with it and then dumped the feathers on them. They did do that. I mean, I'm not trying to say that wasn't done. It was, it was the material they used and the heat of it that I think might have been misinterpreted by some people watching it. But it was a very disturbing scene.
Oh, yeah, and I agree. Tying Murtaugh, that's just out of character for him. He's never been like a torturer or.
Well, he did want to cut the prince's throat.
He did cut Sandringham's head off.
Oh, wait, yeah, that's true.
Yeah,
but that's because he raped someone that he was supposed to be protecting.
Yeah.
Yes, I mean,
we
he swore that he would
do it for the
on
taxes.
Him, right? Over taxes. It doesn't seem like it's enough.
Yeah, I think based on what you were saying, Courtney, about how they keep people to character. Granted, he's not the character that would have been there in the books because he was dead already. Yeah. But I felt like given it was inconsistent with who we've seen all throughout the other seasons.
Yeah, I mean, I think he said his lines in character and all that stuff, but the actual writing for him in that moment was too much of a force.
I think they used him incorrectly. They should have just let him die if they're going to do that.
You know?
Should we go to the anatomical medical stuff right now?
Listen.
Yes.
Before the experts weigh in.
Yeah.
Right? I just want to ask, how the hell they have this body for all those days? Where are the flies? Where is the stench?
Right.
What the hell? Did she inject this man with embalming fluid? You know,
I think that's one of the things we need to talk about.
Yeah, and Marceline goes in, she's like, what am I doing here? Yeah, she'd be like,
woo! We should be overpowered. So I'm sitting there and I'm watching all of this, and then later they go back, and then they go back again, and I'm saying, what the hell is this man made of plastic?
Yes. Carmen, why don't you go?
Oh,
Kathy can.
Gosh, there's so much. Let's do the autopsy,
okay.
Because I think I've told you guys that my husband was a professor of pathology and has done hundreds of autopsies, and I've watched many of them. The cut was done in the midline up the center of the sternum. That would be virtually impossible with a handsaw. With a handsaw.
I've seen lots of autopsy photographs.
The other thing is that you saw the two grips, the iron, I guess they were iron grips.
I saw straps.
They were supposed to be
like leather straps.
No,
I thought.
they had a hook
grips.
on them. They were like claws, you know, sealed claws, and they were pulling the rib cage apart. In surgery, if they go in through that approach, they have a device that they crank to pull those apart. Those measly little pieces of iron, unless they had weights hanging from them, which we couldn't see, are not going to hold that. But what they should have done is a standard autopsy in the United States, and that is that the cut is gone up on either side of the sternum through the ribs, which are much easier to cut through, and then across, and then you lift off or lift up or off that chest plates. And that's what we did in the gross anatomy lab as well. And that gives you full access. You don't have to hold that thing apart, which those two little claws would not have done it. It's too strong, especially on a young man like Mr. What's his name? Parrish. Parrish. It wouldn't have done the job. I thought the interior of the chest looked realistic. I thought the underside of the the fatty subdermis looked realistic. The intestines, I didn't get a real good look at that, so I couldn't really. I saw one loop. I thought overall that it actually was looked convincing as a body opened, fresh body, unembalmed. But I can tell you that in the days before embalming in the gross anatomy lab, they had fresh bodies that they used. And oftentimes they worked on them out of doors so that they could work on them longer because the odor was just so terribly overpowering that they couldn't stand it. So they would work on their dissections outside. And that was done in the South quite a bit. I have a photograph of that actually.
How long would it take for walk us through after 24 hours this, after 48 hours this, in terms of like odor?
After 24 hours, it's going to start to stink if you don't have it, if it's opened especially. And, Roger alluded that he took it down into the root cellar. Now, if it was cold and that root cellar was dug out of the ground, you might be able to retard the decay process a little bit, but believe me, you would not be able to stand it after a couple of days, 3 days. It would just be really awful. And she certainly wouldn't want that smell in her house, I don't think, because it's not going to stay behind that locked door.
No. It was a ruptured appendix. That meant fecal material coming out.
That's right.
Well, but how much time went by in that segment, do we think?
They buried the man.
Maybe
it wasn't the same day.
No, right. No, I know.
There was like the
3
funeral.
Yeah.
And then he said, didn't Roger say your apprentice, that she was teaching him on the body? So that implies that Marceline came back.
And then she said she was gonna she had the thing in the root cell and she was gonna give Marceline 2 or 3 more lessons or something like that. And I'm saying, what the hell? What are they gonna be doing? They'd be elbows deep in mush by that time.
Yeah, the fly business is true. It would just be getting really gross. So let me tell you.
Yeah. Well, what I don't understand is she was like, we do an autopsy to figure out why he died. She already knew why he died. He died from a ruptured appendix. She knew that immediately. So why keep digging?
Maybe she wanted to see what the impact
came in.
What the impact of the mercury.
At the point she opened him up, she would have known immediately why. So there's no reason to keep going after that.
I think it was because then she decided she wanted an apprentice.
She wanted to teach Marceline, but it could also be that she actually was working on practicing, because a surgeon in that time may have well gone down to the autopsy room. Now they send medical students to go down to the autopsy room and talk to the pathologist, but in those days they may have gone down themselves and observed the body. So it's possible that she observed some autopsies before, and it could be that she was also refreshing her anatomical expertise by doing the dissection and looking at the body parts and so forth. That's a hypothesis.
But I'm saying, even still, having already studied it, how long would it have taken her to refresh her memory?
Not long.
Unless you're going into the innervation and the blood vessels and all the rest, if you're dissecting all that out.
She was doing organ examination.
So it would have taken all of a day at the most.
At the most. I agree.
Yeah.
I agree.
So it just felt gratuitous. And it just, and every time,
that's a good term.
And every time somebody went into that room and she pulled away that cloth that was covering the body, and I'm saying to myself, what is this we're watching? I thought we were watching Outlander, not the gross and the dreadful.
At least she covered the face.
And no, that was funny when she killed. Like, let me cover his face, but his
whole innards.
I mean, they all knew who it was too, which is funny. But also, in gross anatomy, that's the last thing we uncovered was the face. That was the very last thing. So I think maybe she was reflecting that a little bit in that tradition in doing that, but I don't really know why they did it that way. you know, his whole body's exposed on the thing, but his face is covered.
Oh,
because
I
the
know.
face is what makes him a person.
Yeah,
Otherwise,
yeah.
Yeah, that's why we
just,
waited
you
till
know,
the end.
Yeah.
Well, and
But
that's probably why
interestingly,
she did it.
glad they're having her make penicillin. But even when reading the books, I always felt that was a bit incredulous. But I'll see, you know, how they do it. But I'm like,
Well,
yeah, you know, I mean, how many? I mean, I'm in medicine. I've studied. I know. I mean, I wouldn't even begin to think that I could make penicillin from mold on bread. I mean,
Do
and
you know,
she's a surgeon, so she knows even less medicine than I do. So
I gotta say though, Kathy, it struck
Yeah.
me as I thought about that too, and that's my initial reaction. But then I thought to myself, now wait a minute, she knew she was coming back. What would you do to prepare? If you only had a vial of some
That's
tablets of penicillin, wouldn't you go back and read about it in your microbiology book? I
That's
would.
probably,
I would
okay.
study
I
up
get
on
that.
it, you
Yeah.
know, and so that if I think of it that way, it makes it a little bit more credulous.
Palatable.
But I'll tell you what wasn't credulous, and that was that table of bread. I don't care how that she worked all night. That was a ton of bread that she was supposed to have baked, and she wouldn't have had that much starter. You know, she can't run down to the grocery store and get yeast. She has to have starter that she's making it with. And I mean, she would have had.
They call breads are us.
So we don't like, wait, what?
No, there's not enough starter. The bread is unrealistic.
They call listen. It's like she called up Amazon. It's like she called up Amazon.
I think they should eat some of that too. Come on.
It was beautiful bread, I have to
Yeah.
say, but
Yeah.
but you know what starter is.
I
You've
was
heard
gonna-
of starter, right?
Yeah, I mean,
Mrs.
you used
Bug
to make
on that.
yogurt.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
But
if
it's just
you know,
funny.
that's all she would have. She wouldn't have any other yeast source than her starter, and that's a lot of loaves of bread to be able to make in one night from whatever starter you had.
You had me at at least she was kneading the bread properly. I'm like, okay, I'll take your word for it.
She was. You roll it with the
Our
heel of
pioneer
your hand.
woman.
Exactly.
So,
she
Carmen,
was.
what else
Yeah.
anatomically and
Well, let's see. Let's talk about the bread mold for a minute. There's been quite a discussion on my Twitter feed today about people who were very concerned about her putting the bread under the bell jars. Would she have had that many? Very unlikely, but she did. It's really important to understand that the spores that produce the penicillium, different varieties of penicillium, they're in the air. They're on surfaces and so forth. They're everywhere. And so just her, you know, making the bread and putting it out on a table and so forth, those spores could already be on the bread. Then they were concerned about, well, there's no air getting in there. Well, first of all, the bell jars are not going to be airtight. Number two, they don't need a lot of the mold doesn't need a lot of air. What it does need is the bread to be moist. So if she didn't overcook it, it would have some moisture in there that it could grow on. But even more important, I think, is she needs to cover it and keep the sunlight away from it, because if it's dark, she's going to get it more likely. But I think that Diana's description of you took microbiology, right, Kathy?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so did I, twice. But she had them in containers with a cloth over the top, if you remember right. And I think that where it was kept moist and dark, and I think that would be more conducive. I think she's going to get a high failure rate off of the bell jar arrangement that she has. But it was very interesting, and
very entertaining.
You know, what I'm a little bit worried about is that I sure hope that people won't start growing their own bread mold, you know, and sticking it on wounds. So I wouldn't be surprised. I'll tell
I wouldn't be surprised at all. Yeah, I'm sure if you look up on the internet, you'll find people who do that. Yeah.
Instead of Outlander Kitchen Cookbook, we got Outlander
Penicillium cookbook.
I like homeopathic medicine.
Yeah,
But
yeah,
I can
it's
say
not actually a
for
good
me,
idea.
the medical part that stuck out the most for me, this more than any other episode that I've seen, in all of the series, was her the real essence of what it means to be a physician and caring for a patient. This was the first time I actually saw that sense of there's nothing more I can do, and that crushing feeling you get when you just know it's that's it. There's nothing more, and then sort of that compartmentalization that happens when you realize that you've gotten through it, and it's like, okay, let's go on to how can this matter. That was very clear. I mean, it was very well done in that episode. The other was the level of frustration when they were going through the candle, when they're making the candles, and just that frustration of people are going to keep dying because I can't stop them from being stupid. I mean, that is so real. It
That's
is such
true
a real
today, too.
feeling.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I felt so bad for her. I felt so bad for her in that scene. And I thought, wow, that was really well done. Because it really captured the essence of the frustration of being a physician, the empathy, frustration, and curiosity all combined
Mhm.
of being a doctor.
I love Dr. Claire in this episode.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it wasn't the gratuitous over your shoulder kind of stuff that we were seeing in like season 2 with all the stuff at the hospital with Monsieur Ferget and all of this nonsense. I mean, I love season 2. I discovered Outlander in season 2, so it's always gonna be my favorite season. It didn't focus on her. You know, it was like they were just showing all these various different things and things that she was doing and being busy. It was like giving her busy work, but it wasn't focusing on her. This
Yeah,
episode,
she showed her heart.
exactly. We got to see her.
Well, and she didn't do any of the stuff like with Rufus last season. Or, you know, if it was 402 Claire, she would have said, "You idiot! You gave him mercury pills."
Yeah.
That was done a lot.
It was a more subtle, more
Yes.
mature, more
More
realistic
restrained.
action to act
More
to that
humane, more
situation.
humane to
But
me.
to that situation, I mean, immediately, you just don't do that. I mean,
Well, and I keep going back to the balance. This
Mhm.
isn't a particularly medical thing, but I feel like in the second half of season 3 and in season 4, they let Claire just run off with the episodes. And it just tilted everything, and then it just felt bad, you know? And
Yeah.
she's contained within the episode. There's a balance on these last 2 episodes that just felt so good to me. And it
It's like a big
enabled
sigh of relief.
yeah, and it's like boundaries. It enabled
Yeah.
me, like, but Claire's not a brat. I'm not like,
No.
ugh.
they've done these last 2 episodes so well that I will be highly insulted if they don't continue with this
Oh,
quality, because
Yeah.
we know they can do it. These last 2 episodes are such that there's absolutely no excuse for anything less.
I think it happens when we get the younger or less experienced writers, and they're so busy that they don't have oversight. I think because we got that big break between seasons that we are seeing what that does for us. I'm like, take 7 months off again, you know. If you're
No,
if that will
I
make-
actually think that's an important point, Courtney, that they took the time.
Yeah, and I feel like Matt is like coming into his own.
Oh yeah.
Really, he is the most qualified person to be running this. In terms of his experience with material.
Yeah.
And I really think he's blossoming this season, and it makes me so happy. I even love Matt and Meryl at the end. I love that combination.
Me
when
too.
Yeah,
they do
that's
the
very
episode.
nice.
Yeah. We're back to the anatomy. What else? Anything else, you guys?
Well, I saw something else, and that is when she's giving Roger his eye exam. No problem, except when she holds up that lamp and her lens. She's not going to, I mean, you know, that's what they do to look at the retina. She's not going to see much with that lamp. She's not going to see into his retina. His eyes aren't dilated, you know. Those are things.
And you have to be, I mean, you can, there's a way of doing it, but it's like you're nose to nose.
That's right.
You know,
And she's like this, you know, she's
yeah. I mean, it's like your
far
eye,
away.
it's like the lens
That's
is here,
right.
your
You've got to
eyes
be
right there.
up there.
Yeah,
and you've got to have a really good light shining in the back of the globe so that you
but
can
my
see
thing
the
is,
retina.
even if she had seen something, what was she going to do about it?
Well, she could at least give him an idea of what might.
Well,
He could get Jamie spectacles. Jamie has spectacles, so I could.
But
They could bond over being bespectacled together.
If it's your retina, there's nothing you can do.
Not really.
Oh god.
Oh,
that
doesn't stop her working on the eye later.
That's
What
all
about what about when Bonnet?
I didn't watch that.
I could not watch that.
No, I had my hands over my face. I still have not watched that scene.
I don't know what he did.
Carmen, you're the only
I
one
watched
who's
it.
brave enough to watch it.
I watched it twice. It was just like in the book. It's just like you remember. I think Lord John Gray wrote Jamie a letter and describes this event that he heard from another person who had been there and witnessed it. Do you remember?
Yes.
And he says that Bonnet
I don't
punished
think that's
the man.
in Fiery Cross, though.
Yeah, it is.
Is it?
I'm pretty sure.
He punished the man.
I think I just read about it because I'm in the middle of the book right now, and I think the letter appears then. But anyway, if I'm mistaken, it might be later. But anyway, he does say that he unnecessarily disfigured the man by drawing his blade across his eyes, and that's basically what he did. It was pretty graphic and pretty horrifying.
Well, I did see him dig into the bridge of the
yeah,
neck.
he gets deeper than at the beginning. He goes in all the way to the bone, it looks to me, without any problem. But it didn't show him drawing the blade across the eyeballs. And in the letter, if I remember right, it says that it got his eyes too, but or it implies that, I think.
Well, he got his eyes, but not.
Yeah.
They were shot.
The thing is, like I said, it was a setup to show his brutality.
Yeah.
Because they show him as this attempting to be genteel. He's still rough around the edges, but then they show that he's really down and dirty.
Did you guys?
That he's a father.
And it doesn't take much either.
Did you guys
push him over that edge?
Catch the line? I listened to it several times. The first thing he says when he says, "Why didn't you just end him or whatever?"
He says, "I have a
reputation to or
no,
an example to set or something."
But he
like
says
that.
a line before that.
I didn't catch it.
I don't know. I listened to it over and over again. Doesn't matter, but
what you do? Put on
the closed
what I do when I can't
caption.
figure out what they're saying. I put on closed caption.
Yeah, I do too.
And I see what they type.
Sometimes
Not always
that's
helpful,
right.
because
Yeah,
sometimes
exactly.
They're like squishy sound.
Sound of eyes being chopped off.
Good, loud.
Any more medical, anatomical?
I want to say something else, and that is that I wrote a lesson on the topic of penicillin back when, when first wife, when she came and she gave him the stick with the penicillin, and because she had gotten the bird shot in his shoulder. Yep. Lesson number 58, if I send you that link, would you put it up with this discussion?
Sure.
That's a
Thank
good
you.
idea.
Yeah.
Yeah, it has a lot of history in it, but Fleming is the one that is credited with discovering
I'd be
penicillin.
happy to do that. Sure.
He called it mold juice.
Oh, good. Mold juice. Yuck.
Did you have any lawyerly things?
No. Even back then, with the rule of law sort of disintegrating, when Lieutenant What's-His-Face said that they'd be taken to, I know what his name is, I just want to call him What's-His-Face. I'm sorry.
And he's taller than Sam, by the way.
I know.
Which I thought that was an interesting choice.
Mhm.
Yeah, but he's squishy. So his height doesn't lend him any gravitas. You know what I mean?
You and squishy man. I don't see it.
Look at all his pudgy features.
Squishy noise. That was like foreshadowing.
But the thing that
Exactly.
was interesting
But-
though is that when he was saying about Jamie, he wishes he could have what Jamie had. So it's clearly that he felt he was subordinate.
Exactly so.
Yeah.
So as I was saying, y'all for me forget that. Oh yeah, he was saying that when they went back to New Bern, they'd be hanged. No, that's you just don't go straight from jail to hanging. You do have to have some kind of trial, even if it's just pro forma, where it's a bench trial where you just go before a judge and they tell whatever they say you did, and you get a chance to just basically say your name, and then the judge finds you guilty. They have to go through some kind of pro forma trial. So it's not straight from jail to the hangman's noose.
And what about him executing that dude without...
I mean, you see, Jamie
No.
should have raised the alarm, and he could have been arrested for that,
Yeah.
right? But Jamie is probably saving that to use against him at a later date.
Yeah.
Well,
The
he's a
walking
man-
between two fires, because
Right.
yeah, because he has got the measure of this one. If he gets rid of this one, who knows who Tryon might send in his place?
That's true.
You know
That's
what I
a
mean?
good point.
So,
That's a good
how
point.
he rationalized it.
better the devil
gave
that
him
you
a better
know,
death.
kind of thing. Better the devil that you know.
That was...
rational-
Right back to him and
Well,
Sandra Man.
he actually flipped completely
Yeah.
from like being remorseful to saying,
So, yeah,
wait, I gave him a soldier's death and he didn't
Yeah.
even deserve that. Like
justification.
yeah, that was,
Yeah.
and I thought,
I don't like him.
I thought it was
Rationalization is what he
interesting.
did.
Jamie's line, he said, sometimes a man must put aside his honor to defend himself.
Mhm. And not just him. And implicit in that is not just himself.
That's right.
Murta.
Not just himself. Everybody
Yes.
that is in his orbit and under his protection.
Always with Jamie.
I also
That was
like the
good.
line that he said to the burn man when he said, "In time you will wear your scars with honor
Mhm.
for having done your duty." And I think he's referring to his own experience in
Yeah.
that. I thought that was
No,
a nice
those
line.
were such little nuggets.
Yes.
Such lovely little nuggets in this episode.
Again,
You know?
for the longtime book fan.
Yes.
And
look
even
at you.
Finally, we're seeing the Jamie that we want to see, and we're seeing the Claire.
Claire that we want to see.
And then
Yes.
even Bree is a voice of reason and a
Yeah.
voice of tough. She's being a little tougher, like with the shooting scene,
Yeah.
and with her talking to her mother about the penicillin, and it just
Courtney?
seems like they finally have their who they're supposed to be.
Things you noticed. I will start. I noticed that when they were bagging up Mr. Regulator guy,
Mhm.
there is no way in hell that that bag contained that guy.
Yeah.
They seem to have
He
lost a
was
lot of-
pretty portly.
He probably joined MPC. I've said what I noticed before.
About
It's
the
just
flies.
that body would have been stinking to high heavens and flies and all of that, and no way, no.
Yeah.
I noticed that.
Oh,
No.
I know. I think Marcy.
I'm willing to suspend my disbelief, but no.
I think Marcy would have had a better apron on if she's chopping goat, because there's blood going all over her little clothes that she doesn't have very many, copies of.
Yeah.
Anyway,
Claire has a leather apron, I think.
I like her apron.
Yeah, I
Oh, the
I like it.
costumes. I'm loving these costumes. I'm
Yeah.
loving the costumes. They just seem so, I don't know, they just work. They're not a distraction. I think sometimes Terry's costumes, especially in season 2, were just so ornate that sometimes they almost became like a character in and of themselves. These costumes they just work. They just look so authentic, and they just do their job in a nice, quiet way. I'm loving the costumes.
You know, if you go shopping at what used to be Neiman Marcus,
Yeah.
and then you go to something that's a little bit not, you know, there's a difference in the tailoring and the and Terry's stuff is just
it's tailored immaculately. There's no question about it.
Gorgeous.
It is.
Well, they were richer in Paris. No, they don't have no money. They're struggling. I'm surprised that I am surprised by how big and ostentatious the house is.
Well,
but then I read somewhere that I mean that they are definitely knowing that they're asking us to suspend our disbelief about how big this house is. But practically, I read somewhere that if they had built it to scale, they wouldn't have been able to fit the crew and the cast and the cameras in there. So
yeah, exactly. That's true.
I'm willing to give them a pass on that.
That's why they made the cabin as large as they did.
Yeah, I'm willing to give them a pass on that.
Yeah, I mean,
but I will say I wouldn't have put a brick floor in the surgery.
That's got to be uncomfortable to stand on for a long
time. Not only that, but
it
absorbs whatever falls on the floor or whatever, the bodily fluids or blood or whatever it is, it's going to stay in those cracks, and that's not good.
What I noticed was the house. I didn't care that it was large because I'm just thinking he was building the house for Claire. And so that would have been motivation to try and make it as large and as nice as possible. I mean,
he did do that.
Think about it. I mean, the Taj Mahal, it was built by a man who loved his wife. So, I mean,
that's true.
That's what men do. They build nice houses for the women they love. But I think that having been, and being surrounded by pine and him being handy, I think that it was possible. It maybe not described the same as in the book, but I think it was realistic in terms of it was plausible, I think.
Yeah, the only thing that I thought was probably not realistic was the beautiful, the molding around the doors that were, what's that tool they use?
I forget what they call that.
Like embossing kind of thing? Or
well, they use a certain tool that will create that, that
the beautiful panel doors. You know,
which are eight panels. I said
walls.
That craftsmanship was a bit exquisite.
I saw River Run. I saw
more doors are us. You know what I'm saying?
Wilmington. I saw. I mean, Wilmington walls. Those walls that were in those green walls in Marceline Fergus's house are now at the Ridge, and I love them because they're glazed. I found out. It was a green paint, but it was covered in like different colored glazes. So what happens every time the light hits it, depending on the type of light, the angle, it changed the color and the richness of what you're seeing.
Yeah, that's like fabric does that, certain fabric.
Wow.
They do that with all of it. Like they did with River Run, they did it. It's just this richness that it just, you can almost smell.
They should do something called wall porn. I have a great idea.
Kathy, you should start a blog. Wall.
I think that there is a
Outlander
scene in the Fiery Cross that involves wall porn. Am I right?
Oh, yeah.
Spoiler.
In the stable.
Spoiler.
I hope we get that scene.
No, I'm not saying anything else. Just that there's a scene.
Even in last episode, Jocasta commented on, because she felt the walls in that little hut. So that was kind of,
Yes.
So the walls come up. They are almost a character in and of themselves because they're so well done and so beautiful. And now they're being commented on. So see, I'm not feeling
by you.
I like your wall observations. It's not something that I pay much
Courtney.
attention to.
Ooh, so shady.
So what did you think about Kathy, about Ethan? That was the heavy set guy that knocks stabs.
Yeah.
What did you think about him dying so quickly from that
I
wound?
figured they must have gone through his aorta.
That's what I thought too. I
Yeah,
was
it had
thinking
to
the
have been.
Because I was
abdominal
wondering
aorta
why he
got
had blood
severed
in
in
his
that.
mouth, coming out of his mouth when he was stabbed in the heart, chest area.
Well, that's
Belly.
Belly.
Belly, right?
Why was he having blood coming out of his mouth?
I think for theatrical reasons. First of all, for him to die that swiftly, it would have had to have been a mortal wound immediately because he died fast.
Yeah.
So the severing of the aorta is the thing that I would expect. It was too low to be the heart,
Yeah.
in my view. And the other thing is that if you do that, even if the sword passed through the stomach in order to get to the aorta,
It wouldn't have
that
come
blood
through
would have to get from the aorta into the stomach, then regurgitate back up through the esophagus and into the mouth and out the mouth or nose. And that makes no sense.
Who were your standouts?
My standout was, of course, the inimitable Miss Lauren Lyle.
Yes.
Love her to bits.
Yeah.
Want to see
I
more
agree.
of her. Expand her part.
Which they
She
are.
can
That's so
teach-
smart.
She can teach people how to act and inhabit a character. Do you know what I mean? She reminds me so much of Laura Donnelly in that ability to just inhabit a character and just be present in a scene and just deliver. Love it. Love.
Make it.
So she was my standout.
Mine too.
Yeah.
Mine too. And I have
Mine
to
too.
say, I cannot believe how many different expressions flicked across her face in the course of 5 seconds? There must have been like 12 or 13. I was just astounded
And
by
they
it.
all meant something.
Yes.
You followed perfectly what she went through.
Yeah.
I know. It's just like it was like this cross. Like I really loved it when she got to the body and was like she was curious, but she was disgusted. She was like, yeah, but I want to see, but okay, no, I shouldn't want to see, but oh, what's that? You know,
and then when Claire says that she's gonna stitch him up instead of
like,
letting that just go, she's like
again. My
Stitch?
like a seamstress.
Yeah. Yes.
Okay. Yeah, I think the other standout is finally was Sam. I think that last season he was emasculated, and it's like they cut off his balls, stuck him in a jar, and put it on a shelf. And this season they gave him, he's got him back, and it's like you suddenly see this heaviness, his presence, and there's a heaviness in his. It's like.
He's a man of worth.
Yeah, exactly. That's the perfect way of
Substance.
putting it.
Like pride and
substance. And
substance.
and he's thinking. It's like
And
the
it's
other
beautiful to see.
back.
Yes.
His intelligence is back. So he's thinking and he's playing situations and he's trying to make sure it's not Claire telling him what to do or him trying to protect. It was him on his own figuring something out with like the intelligent man that he is, and then we got enough, some nice close-ups too of his face. We got to see some facial action.
Well, he's always, in my opinion, from the very start, done wonderfully with what he was given. But last season, it and part of 3, it was just heartbreaking. Just heartbreaking to see his skills and talents be flushed like that.
Squandered.
Yeah.
I think Roger also, I think that what they've done with Roger, I mean, he went from being annoying to being not very interesting to suddenly like, that's somebody I kick out of bed. But
hey, you're kind of charming.
Exactly.
Well, and more likable. But back to Sam, I remember something Catherine said about how in season 1 she never saw Sam. She always just saw Jamie, and I feel like that's happening for me in season 5 so far. And having sat across from Sam in person, I've even checked in and been like, "Do I see Sam? No. That's not Sam. That's Jamie."
No.
And it's that I'm really enjoying of just of having no glimpses because again, I think that's whoever, one of you guys said, I think it was you, Catherine, that said that you really thought the issue was the writing, and I think it's being borne out this season.
Yeah.
I think we all said it, but at the same time, but it's interesting when it comes to Bonnet though.
Mhm.
Seeing Ed is making Bonnet more interesting to me.
More believable to me,
More
and not
believable. I
less
think
of a
that
character.
I think that honestly, I think that Ed in his person, in his persona, is more menacing and tough than Bonnet is supposed to be. He's like that quiet, like Ed seems like one of those people where he's charming, he's intelligent, he's well controlled, but man, I would not want to piss him off in an alley.
No, he's an Outlander
That's
boy.
the
Yeah,
that's
exactly.
Bonnet.
He's a tough.
He's a tough cookie. He's an Outlander boy.
So when
Yeah.
that part of him comes through, to
Mhm.
me, that's more believable as Bonnet
And
than the
scarier, actually,
Well,
to
and
me than
he's connected with that character now
Yeah.
in
Yes.
this season. I don't think it's for me anything to do with meeting Sam. I met him a long time ago. It's the portrayal. Like
Yeah.
season 1, he is Jamie, you know?
Yeah.
And then I haven't watched season 2 in so long. First part of season 3, he's awesome. But then he kind of goes in and out. I don't know.
Yeah, it's
That
what he
was
was.
writing.
It was the writing. It was the
Yeah,
writing, because
I
a
agree.
lot of the best Jamie lines and the best Jamie situations were given to other people.
Yes.
Yeah. The Jamie.
You know what I mean?
Yes.
All the stuff that went into making Jamie the Jamie that all of us fell in love with reading the books were given to other people.
Yes.
You know?
Yeah.
That started in the latter part of season 2, where a lot of Jamie's stuff was given to Murtaugh to say and do.
And Claire.
You know, and Claire.
Claire.
And then in the second half of season 3, forget about it.
The way Bonnet was before, Roger
Mhm.
knew him, and there's absolutely no way other than a physical threat that he would think that Bonnet was a threat to him, other than just that he's, crazy and he's cruel. The way he is now, I think he would feel threatened by him by his charm. I think he'd feel that, not that he would think that Bree would actually fall for him, although in the books there's some weird dynamic there. I could see him hiding his menace enough so that another man would feel jealous. The way he is now, and that, especially in that last scene, it was just like, okay.
He could easily taunt Roger with with "I'm the father of your of this boy."
Oh, definitely.
Too, and it's going to be interesting to see how they're going to resolve that.
Big themes. Go ahead. Anybody?
I just think the big theme in this is truly I think they did a really, really, really good job with the title of the episode.
Yeah.
Between Two Fires. It was like not even between a rock and a hard place. It was like you're gonna burn no matter if you tip in any direction, you're about to get burned.
Yeah.
That is it was so clear on so many different levels.
I agree.
The show that
Well, and I thought even, Carmen, you mentioned all the characters, even Bonnet a little bit.
Yeah.
Yes.
Between
Even
Two
Claire.
Fires.
But even Claire with the whole autopsy thing.
And now Marceline. And now Marceline is going to be
Marceline to freak out and tell somebody, or someone to walk into the room when she's looking at, it's like she's between the fire of wanting to do right by the people of the Ridge medically and the fire of being really people
burned as a witch.
And then
I had one line that I thought was written for me.
Yeah, good lines. What was that?
It's a marvelous thing, the human body.
Yes.
Claire says that.
Yes, she does.
And that that just, oh my gosh, I felt my heart swell, like
Aww.
the branch. I loved it.
I liked Roger's, I got to find it because I don't know it exactly, but when he says, "The Apprentice and the Root Cellar," surely that's a Nancy Drew just waiting to be written.
I agree with Kathy. In terms of the episode sort of encapsulating the big theme of like divided loyalties and people being put in a position where having to make very, very difficult choices and walking that tightrope, so that was the big theme for me, being in that cleft stick.
Yep. Yeah, I agree. I think that was the big theme, and they stuck to it, and so that's the
They
main
didn't
one.
wander. That
They
was
did
nice.
not wander.
I
There
mean,
were a few flubs here and there, but listen, I'm very, very excited by these first two.
But what I
Me
like,
too.
no one in any part of it let any part of it down.
Exactly.
Everybody elevated the writing, the editing, the cinematography, the acting, the scenery. It's like everyone was at
The
the
directing.
top of the game, and it all came together so beautifully.
Mhm.
And it's gonna be, if they've set the bar really high, where it should be, because they did the first season too.
Yeah.
That I hope it really stays there, because they've done such a thing.
Well, if it doesn't, I will personally be rioting.
Oh,
Okay.
I believe
really?
You'll have your
No.
own Hillsboro.
I'm always rioting.
Yeah, no.
I got my signs
Never.
ready. Bring back Outlander.
Did you guys see that next episode is the Beardsleys?
Yes.
So I was a little bit like, oh gosh, this one was really riveting, and like, oh, and then this one's gonna be, oh.
No, it's gonna be interesting.
It's
This
gonna be
one is
good,
gonna-
but I hope number
yeah.
4 is gonna be back to some like family and.
Yeah, I
Well,
like that.
This next
I like
one
that
is going to be
storyline
gross.
though in the books.
I think the next one is going to be gross. So
Well, so you're gonna love it.
I will.
I didn't like the Beardsley storyline in the book.
Yeah, because
I thought it was fascinating.
What's that whole family of the brother and the father and the girl that became Claire's apprentice?
That's
Well, they're
Malva.
not-
Yeah,
I don't think they're doing that.
It looks like they've eliminated that whole family.
Well,
Thank God, because I
they
didn't
have
like
to
that
have Tom
storyline.
Christie at some, but maybe they're not going to have Malva.
No.
I don't know.
Why would they need Tom Christie for what?
Well, I think he's a little bit.
because
Well, they
he
can always
plays
change-
an important role in the next book.
Yeah.
Or they could always,
But if
they could use someone
They
else.
could
could use
they
someone
could
else.
substitute somebody else. That's
Yeah.
true.
I mean, it'll be interesting to see. I
Well,
applaud that decision to go ahead and
Well-
give Malva's apprenticeship to Marceline.
Yeah, I love.
well, let me say this.
Oh, I
Yeah.
would have liked to have seen Malva, actually.
Well, I mean, we may still see her, and I mean,
But not in that
Duncan
way.
Ennis is here.
Duncan, yes, come back.
Yeah.
I thought they'd done away with him. I'm liking the creative adaptations that they have been making so far. These are working.
Yes.
They are working. And if we have this kind of, it's obvious that a lot of the intellectual laziness that plagued season 4 so far, I have not seen it in season 5. If they are ripping up the books and being creative and adapting stuff, I'm all for it as long as it bloody works.
Yeah. Agree.
Is the next one longer? I read today that the next one is going to be longer. Did you guys see that?
No, I didn't. Like
Somebody tweeted it was like 20 minutes longer or something like that than usual.
Where are they gonna find those 20 minutes?
Well, what? I don't want to see 20 more minutes of the Beardsleys. I hope it's something else.
Well, you remember the Beardsleys went into Brownsville. I mean,
Yeah,
segued
and
into
some
Brownsville.
interesting
so-
stuff happened.
Mhm.
Yes.
And Isaiah Morton plays a role there, so maybe we'll see something.
Yeah,
That might
he's
be
been along
interesting.
for the ride.
I think this
Yeah.
book I skimmed a lot, so I don't remember a lot.
Me
of
too.
details.
Oh
This is
God.
I love this book.
I did too.
I
I
really like that.
I re-listened to it, re-divined it, as I call it.
I've only
Um,
read it once, and even that I didn't read it.
Oh,
If you read it again, you'll like it better.
I think so too. The
I've read
only
it-
part that's
I've read
hard
it
for
3
me is the
times.
first 14
The first
chapters.
part.
Yeah, okay, the gathering. Yeah.
I like that. I like the gathering.
Oh God, it was like the
All I
never
can think
ending.
was
I liked
mud
it too, but it
and
went
gross,
on a
and
long
nobody washing, and everybody probably smelled.
But I thought Matt was a genius to do the whole gathering, like 300 pages in
Yes,
one
one-
episode.
That's
Oh,
true.
yeah, that was a
Boom.
stroke of genius.
Now we have lots of room for,
To do
I
all
hope,
kinds of
things
stuff.
that we really want to see
Yeah.
and experience. Well, it feels like we're wrapping up, ladies.
Yep. Yeah,
Anybody
I gotta
have-
wrap up because I got work to do.
Anybody have anything else? Antoinette, I'm so glad you came.
I'm
Yeah.
glad that I pushed through and came because yeah, it's been a rough couple
It's good for your heart
Yeah.
It is.
to join us, you know.
Here's a hug.
Yeah.
For all of
Is
us.